I've got one question.
Do you wanna build a snowman?
And not just any snowman, a snowman made out of money. We're heading into a global recession, which on the one hand can be very scary, but on the other hand can provide a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create wealth. I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Like this video if you want an amazing beach body, and subscribe to my channel if you have any interest in growing wealth. You can trust me because I have reading glasses. Firstly, how do we know we're headed for a global recession? Well, there's many signs all pointing towards that scenario. Let's go through some of them. The world has just gone through the biggest money printing exercise they've ever done. And as a result, national debts are soaring. US national debt is now over 31 trillion and growing exponentially. And the real worry is the interest payments on this debt. So US federal interest payments could soon exceed military spending. So while national debts are soaring, we've seen interest rates rise at their fastest level in many years and signs that they're going to stay higher for longer. So even if interest rates stop rising shortly, the fact that they could remain at these higher levels for an extended period of time could really affect the economy, especially since central banks around the globe all participated in ultra loose monetary policies, which created a dependency on cheap and easy money. Higher interest rates drastically affects economic activity because debt that was previously cheap as chips is now having a significant impact on entire nations and their people. We've started to see massive layoffs from big international companies. Just recently, we've seen the following reports. Meta to cut around 11,000 employees, Twitter to cut around 3,700, and Amazon to cut around 10,000 employees. These mass layoffs are a very clear sign of an economic recession. We've seen the stock market fall significantly from its highs. In many places, the falls have been over 20%, and we're seeing the start of a global housing bust, with the countries who saw the highest gains, such as Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, seeing significant falls in house prices. So with interest rates rising nearly everywhere, we could very well see a synchronized housing downturn, which will have a massive effect on the global economy, because real estate is a leading source of household wealth. Add to this, we've got a grinding war occurring between Russia and Ukraine, and other potential geopolitical risks, such as China trying to take over Taiwan. As you can see, we've got multiple signs all pointing towards a global recession. So we need to understand what will happen in a recession so we can build our strategies to protect and to thrive. Firstly, consumer spending is drastically reduced. As costs of living increase, discretionary spending takes a dive. You know it yourself, when you're feeling wealthy and your income's way higher than your expenses, you're happy to spend more. You go on more holidays, you buy more stuff like cars and TVs and all of that. But when your expenses goes through the roof but your income doesn't, you start to go into protection mode, especially if you see some of your assets reducing in price, like any property you own or stocks. And when people as a collective spend a lot less, companies don't earn as much income. And when companies' expenses going up and their income's going down, that leads to lower profits, which in turn leads to increased layoffs. If someone's lost their job and they can't find another one quickly, they could be forced to sell some stocks or even potentially their home. So this distressed selling, combined with a general fear that enters the entire market, results in some distressed selling and potential capitulation. We see this in the stock market when there's extreme fear and panic and stocks get sold down drastically because people don't want that risk of losing any more money. You see this in real estate as well, but often to a lesser extent. If interest rates stay high and unemployment starts to rise, it'll be a deadly combination for the housing market because mortgage repayments will be very high, but in a recession there's more risk of losing a job, which could make it extremely difficult to service that mortgage, especially because many were enticed with very large mortgages while the interest rates were near zero. So what generally happens in a recession, especially a deep one, is that you start seeing a large transfer of wealth. Some that did extremely well during the previous boom periods will often lose a significant amount of wealth in the downturn, and a lot of that wealth can be transferred to new people who make wise investment decisions during that downturn. So how can we best position ourselves so the transfer transfer of wealth comes towards us and not away from us. First, we need to protect our current income. Knowing there's going to be an increase in layoffs, make sure you have the right skills and abilities to be able to get another job quickly if you have to. If you need to, start learning some of those in-demand skills that will be in high demand in the coming years. That will add some protection to your main income stream, which provides your chief ability to purchase investments. Secondly, we want to reduce our expenses. If you can't get a promotion at your job, you can do the equivalent money-wise by reducing the amount you spend. Now's a great opportunity to reduce your expenses by cutting out those things you don't actually need and that don't benefit you. Things like reducing your subscription services, reduce buying stuff you don't need, and definitely try to reduce any debt you're paying on assets that aren't appreciating. For example, car loans. You want as much overall gap between your total income and your total expenses to give you that free cash flow to be able to buy investments, because investments will ultimately make you rich. Thirdly, you want to try to increase your income, and the best ways to do this could be starting a side hustle or a business. Take the mentality of any extra income is beneficial, whether it's something small you're doing on the side or a business you're trying to grow on the side to eventually take over your main source of income. Any additional income can increase your cash flow, and like they say, cash flow is king. So when you've done everything you can to improve your income and reduce your expenses, it's often wise to hold some cash for opportunities. Many successful investors will always hold a percentage of cash, because if we end up seeing some distressed selling of assets in the future, it's great to have cash to really capitalize on those opportunities. So once we've done all that, our strategy is to buy the best quality assets we can at a discounted price. Now, a quality asset is something that's going to appreciate in value in the future. Generally, both the stock market and real estate rise over the long term. So that's normally a great idea, but you can still lose money by buying the wrong stocks or the wrong property. And that's where the quality comes in. You need to do your research to try and find those investments that could appreciate in value the most. And there's many ways to reduce your overall risk. For example, in the stock market, you can buy exchange traded funds or ETFs, which could mirror the entire market like the S&P 500, or you could buy an ETF over a basket of stocks to reduce the risk of owning an individual company. So know your risk tolerance and invest accordingly. So how do you know when to invest in a recession? Well, frankly, you don't. It's really impossible to know how far asset prices will actually fall. So investing regularly could be a great strategy. For example, if you're able to invest regularly into the stock market, you could be investing while it's falling down, while it bottoms, and then while it starts picking back up again. That's probably the best way to actually catch the bottom. But to be able to invest consistently, you really need that great cash flow with your income being way higher than your expenses. So that's the real challenge. If you use loans to buy real estate or shares, you can magnify your returns, but just make sure you can service the loans and you don't become one of those distressed sellers. So buying quality assets at reduced prices is one of the best ways to grow wealth. But because you're investing in a recession and you don't know how long it's going to last, you really have to be invested for the long term. There's no point buying some stocks, seeing them fall in 3 months and then selling them at a lower price. You've done your research, you've bought quality assets, so you might need to wait a while for them to appreciate in the future. I'm not saying you can't buy and sell different stocks, but in general, you want to be invested for the long term to give your assets enough time to ride out the recession and start appreciating. Now, on top of traditional large cap stocks or real estate, you could look to invest in some sectors that could do well during a recession. And one sector that could do very well is precious metals. Investing in assets like gold, silver, platinum, and palladium can do very well in periods of high inflation and low economic growth, which is called stagflationary periods. Precious metals have intrinsic value because you can't just inflate their value away like you can with money by printing more of it. And because gold and silver have been so sought after and held so much value over humanity's history, it could start to see more and more safe haven buying as a protection against losing wealth. And just recently, central banks have been increasing their gold reserves at record levels. So we could potentially get in on some of that action too. And you could do that by buying physical precious metals or actual stocks that explore, mine, and produce those precious metals. Recessions can be very scary times, and a synchronated global recession could be even scarier. However, it could actually provide the greatest opportunity in your lifetime to create real wealth. I'm Biko Konstantinos.